Cade is going to be sharing with us framework that's kind of built off of the hero's journey, as well as another iteration of it. It's a little bit more condensed versus the 12 steps, but we're going to go through and see how this can apply to like character development, just in general, how you could use a recipe like this inside of your process for writing books now or in the future with your marketing. We've got Mike got his outline sent over, and we're going to dive into his outline here after Cade.
This process is really cool, man. Like, I never knew I was gonna get any kind of words on the paper, but now I finally have my thoughts out, and now I know how like the process is and everything. I haven't finished the outline entirely, but I'm able to actually visually see like what my book is. But before that, I wasn't able to like actually have a vision for it. You know what I mean? So this is very helpful, and it actually made me like realize a lot more about myself and my self journey. So it's really cool. I appreciate the program you put together so far.
I think for me, it's brought a little bit even sharper focus of who the target audience is going to be. I think I was in some ways erring on the side of caution in not getting too narrow, too focused. But the more I wrote it and the more I allowed myself to get sharper in focus, it was easier to write it, because now I'm writing it to 90% of the companies I've worked with over the last 6 years, versus thinking maybe I should leave it open a little bit more and maybe capture a few more from outside the industry. So specifically, I was saying SaaS and technology and related companies, and I was, early stage, startup, early stage, and growth stage. And now I'm actually squeezing that a little bit more. I'm being very specifically SaaS. I'm adjusting the title to say SaaS, and I'm going much more specific on early stage and startup, or startup and early stage. And I think that's made it like I feel like I'm sitting with some of my current and past clients as I'm thinking about it and writing it. And that wasn't until I was allowing myself to sharpen that focus or bring it in a little bit tighter.
That's great. Yes. In my experience, specificity wins. And the more specific and the more focused you are throughout this outline process, the less daunting it's going to seem, especially as you're in the thick of it and you like, oh crap, how do I have 20,000 words now and go back through and beat it, right? Keeping that crystal clear focus is why we start with the why, and why we start with the end in mind of what you want. And Chris, the outline is one of the heavier pieces that once that is out, just like you're saying, it makes the path that much more visible as you kind of weave through from start to finish. But also, if all you get done today is a really solid outline that you're ready to start working off of, that's the biggest focus for today into it, right? The outline is going to let you just hit the ground running Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? There's no reason you can't get 25,000 words out in a 4-day, 25,000 words out in that time. You can easily write 5,000 words a day, no problem. Jarvis makes it easy to get the meat of it out. The biggest time investment outside of writing the book, once you get it out, is going to be the refining it and editing it once the book is out. So that's why we say don't edit while you're doing the book, right? Get it all out, then come back, get another set of eyes on it. You'll be sick of your book by the time this is done, but you'll be ready to publish it.
Yeah, hi Darby, hi everybody. I just wanted to say real quick, this is the first time that I feel like I finally have all the tools in one place to accomplish this. The tools, the structure, the process, and thank you, Darby, for putting it together. Jarvis, he's becoming my buddy, and it's just an awesome tool.
Welcome, Cade Scott, fiction writer and storyteller, who's going to be sharing with us a really cool new recipe that you can use to apply to do a lot of things. I'm going to let Cade take it over from here, because this is my first time seeing this recipe in action too. I had an interview with Cade a week or so ago. It's out of Jarvis Underground. Talked a lot about storytelling, character development, story arcs, all of that. And so Cade is kind enough to lend us his time here in the challenge and go through this recipe and what he's created so that you can apply it in your own book, on business, however you're using Jarvis. Cade?
Jarvis has changed my life just as a fiction writer. Just my ability to write fiction and create templates out of fiction formulas, out of my own framework. And I never thought that could be possible, that I could use AI to help me when I'm stuck with fiction. I've used this template and this framework to influence my fiction, but also it bleeds over into the web copy that I create. So the recipe that I have, and I'm going to show you after I kind of give you the presentation, is still in its fiction form, but we can kind of roll with it on the fly here and see what we can come up with. And I'm hoping that this framework helps you build your own stories within the chapters that you'll be writing with Jarvis in your own nonfiction novels or books or memoirs. So like I said, I kind of want to go up here. This is a little bit about me. Again, this epic, what I call the epic story framework, I've used to write a lot of short chat fiction stories, a couple of short films, one that just hit 100,000 views on YouTube, one that's making its premiere in LA. And then here's a couple of websites that I've written for, that I've used the framework for. And this framework is inspired by The Hero's Journey, by Joseph Campbell's work in The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And I know Darby has his own recipe on The Hero's Journey that I don't know if he shared it with y'all, but it's kind of a simplified version of that. I've kind of taken Dan Harmon's, if any of you know who that is. Any Community fans or Rick and Morty fans in this group?
Oh yeah.
There we go. So Dan Harmon,
for sure.
Community for sure. Yeah. So Dan Harmon has taken The Hero's Journey and simplified it and made his own framework from it that he calls the story circle. And so I've kind of adopted that and tried to tweak it a bit that works for my process. Here's the framework, A, B, D, C, E. There's one letter out of place here. So before you get on to me, it stands for action, backstory, development, climax, end. So each story should start with some sort of action to hook the reader, to compel the reader. Then you set the context, introduce the character who enters a new world. You develop the story from there, where it reaches a climax and then a resolution. Okay, so we're going to dive into each part, and then we're going to see if Jarvis can give us some inputs based off this framework. Okay, action. I've learned to start my stories with action. One, because it immediately hooks the audience and gets them invested, especially today when you know the window to catch someone's attention is so small. I'm thinking of even the ADA framework with the attention being the first thing. Same thing here with a story, right? You want to start with action. Plus, if you do start with action, what I've found is your audience will be much more invested and willing to endure when you move on to the B aspect, the backstory, setting the context. I've found two ways to frame your action. One, with a scene that takes place before the actual adventure or change in the character's life, or a scene in the middle of the story that you're kind of flashing forward to, and you'll kind of tease the audience with, and leave them on a cliffhanger and then move on. Most of the great movies or TV shows do this, the epic ones at least. I'm thinking of Star Wars, where we get Darth Vader freaking riding in on a Star Destroyer, going to capture Princess Leia, before switching to Luke on Tatooine and getting that kind of backstory, right? Or Breaking Bad, which puts us in the middle of the story of the climax, which presents us with a guy in his underpants riding around in an RV. So we're just given that image, no context. It hooks us, it compels us. We sit down in our seat and we're invested. So the way I could see it playing out for us, especially in the nonfiction space, is asking yourself these questions. When was the moment you realized things needed to change? Or describe a moment when you realized you made the right choice, when you were in the middle of your adventure and you're like, yes, this is the feeling that I was after. This is the point of success. Let me give you a teaser of what success looks like before going into what life was before that change or that success. So after you start with action, right, you move on to the B side, which is the backstory, which is the intro to the character we empathize with and root for. So your story starts with a bang, and now it's time to take a breath and set the audience up for the adventure. What I'd like to say is you like to provide some context. And that's really important because here's what we need to know before we move forward, right? In any story. All stories, epic stories at least, have a main character or a hero. It's a hero's journey, right? And the audience needs to gravitate, empathize with, sympathize with this hero. And that's usually done with giving them a specific want or desire or need, which is usually external at this point, right? Even though the story brings them through an internal change, the character has to want something, right? And that desire is so strong that it calls them to an adventure and it compels them to act and pursue their desire. So Star Wars, right? Luke is stranded on this planet he doesn't want to be stranded on. He wishes for a life that's greater than the one he has now, right? We have a character, we have a strong want that will then compel them to action. Or Breaking Bad, a teacher who has been dealt a bad hand in life, wants to leave his family with some money before he dies of cancer. He wants to leave them with something that they can take care of, that takes care of them. To help with what I think kind of the nonfiction element here is ask yourself, what does life look like before the major change in your life? So what's a day in the life look like before the big change? And then when did you realize that something needed to change or that you wanted more from your situation or from something? So start out for the bang. You're the main character in this context, right? And you're living your life, but something's not quite right, right? There's a problem that needs to be solved. You want something. Then we move on to the adventure. This is where a majority of the story should be spent. So if you think about the amount of words or page length, the most should be spent in this development stage. All right. Only provide as much context as you need to get us to this stage. Only as much backstory as we need to get us to this stage. All right. This is where the hero is in pursuit of their want, desire, or need. And just like when you try something new, nothing is ever easy the first time you try it, right? Especially if the environment, process, or tool is entirely new to you. So during this time or this stage, you're going to experience failure. This is in the hero's journey. This is called the road of trials. The hero fails to adapt to the new world, oftentimes barely escaping with his life within the story, within the context of the story. But this could be where you enter that new world, you decide to pursue that desire, and you realize it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, or I knew it wasn't going to be easy. This is me going through kind of the trials. This is me failing. This is what I learned from my failings. Also in this stage, usually you find out who or what is going to help you and who or what is an obstacle to you. But ultimately, this new world and this failure kind of wears you down until you have to reckon with turning back and not pursuing what you want. This is often the midpoint, right? Where the hero wrestles with internal demons. And they ultimately decide, hey, I don't want what I thought I wanted, and this is actually what I want, or what I want is worth trudging through this pain and this failure for. The hero musters their internal strength, continues to adapt to this chaotic new world until they master it. So in Star Wars, Luke adjusts to his new life as a Jedi, right? But they end up getting captured by rebel forces. But when all hope seems lost, he decides to go out and be proactive and save Princess Leia himself with the help of Han Solo and Chewbacca, right? Or in Breaking Bad, Walt figures out, he decides to cook meth, right? He needs the money, but the logistics and the risk of cooking meth doesn't seem to pay off how he had hoped. So he goes to the guys that he's selling the meth to and demands more money, right? So that's in its fiction story context. But here's kind of what I think you should be asking yourselves in kind of a memoir or nonfiction aspect is, when you first went on the adventure, did you fail? How? In what way? And did you struggle to continue to persevere at times? And more importantly, what made you keep going? That's what's compelling to us, is that internal transformation, battling with those internal demons, because we all have them, right? What made you keep going? What made you persevere? So after you've established that, you've started with some action, you've given us some context and backstory, right? Found out it wasn't as easy as you thought, kind of reached the midpoint or the low point, wanted to turn back, but decided to keep going through. That's where we get to the climax, the final showdown, which results in a character transformation. It's where the hero pushes on to face the big bad or defeat it once and for all. And again, the big bad can be an external enemy, can be an internal demon, or both. Is the story has been building to this moment, right? All that internal change, the failure now manifests itself in the hero externally as they now have a chance to attain what they desired from the beginning. But usually they face their toughest test yet here. They meet the most resistance. Someone or something stands in their way. Ultimately, right, you overcome it and you acquire what you want. Bonus points if it comes at a cost, right? Meaning either they had to become someone different in order to attain that desire, or you had to become someone different, or you ended up attaining a want or desire different from when you first set out for the adventure. For your own stories, or just try to flesh this out, is to ask yourself, what was the final obstacle you had to overcome in order to get what you wanted? And how did this experience impact or change you so that you attained what you wanted? And then you return to the world. They say the normal world, now changed, with a gift that you can give someone. And that can be a physical gift or kind of a changed perspective, wisdom that you can give, or both. But mainly kind of this resolution, and this should be quick. This resolution or this final scene is just to show how much the character has changed since the beginning, since the start, and to see how the adventure has changed them. So to flesh this out, after you've gone through this adventure and you've changed, how did this new knowledge or perspective change your day-to-day, change your routine, your cadence? And could your friends, family, or community see a difference in you? So again, just to show you that framework, the reason I simplified it to AB, action, backstory, development, climax, end, is because the story circle is filled with a bunch of parts and slices and components that you can easily get lost in. And some components you'll use at certain times, depending on the situation and the story you want to tell, and some you'll leave out. So, but if you ever get lost, right, here's that general framework that kind of overlays a complete story, that encapsulates the hero's journey, or the story circle, Dan Harmon's story circle. You know, if you're starting each chapter with a personal story, right, using this framework each time. And then the wisdom that you impart based on what you've learned through the story that you tell is then the chapter itself, the how-to side of it. You return to the normal world with that gift that you give your audience, with that perspective that you'll then give to your audience, right? And you're setting that up with that compelling story at the beginning of each chapter. Yeah, so I have the fiction side of it. Cool. If we want to kind of map it out.
Yeah, give us a show of that, because it's and how you would use it.
All right, so here's kind of the fiction story idea and outline based off of that framework that I put together. Great thing about Jarvis is it can help you with any part of the what I found the fiction process. And it can give you ideas for different stories. It can flesh out that premise, right? It can flesh out the main character of the story. And then I go into kind of what we talked about here. This was the MVP version, but I'm kind of excited to update it with because here, let's start with action, the action framework. Then it goes into fleshing out the story itself, and then you can use Jarvis to fill in the gaps. So again, a day in the life. What does my main character daily routine look like? You start asking the questions that we took from the framework itself, like what does this character want? And how will they get what they want, right? That's the call to action, refusal of the call. What do they want and why? What makes them realize they want this? Will they immediately go after what they want? Why or why not? They ultimately decide they want to. What is the inciting incident? What's that moment? How do they adapt to their new world and end up getting what they wanted? And what price do they pay for it? And how do they return back? what wisdom or gift they give back to where they to their world, right? The normal world.
It is a early to mid 30-year-old CEO, first time CEO of a software company who has a technical background and has never been in a sales position. How far do you want me to go? Like just spew it all on you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll add what we need.
On a personal level, these individuals are typically married with 1 or 2 kids. Both they and their partner are college educated, but are striving for a better life than what traditional employment will provide. Generally altruistic in nature. They don't like win-lose situations. They strive for win-win situations. But here they are with an idea, and they've managed to raise some money. They likely have some revenue, but are now feeling the pressure and stress from investors to begin scaling their sales. Problem is, they don't have a background in sales, and they don't know where to start.
Perfect. Take that. So what I like to do, especially when it comes to character personas, when we want to get at what does the character want, who are they at their core, what does Mike want? I like to ask 3 questions in particular. What does the character want? What do they fear? And what do they actually need? Which gets at the external aspect, the want, the internal aspect, which is the need, and then kind of their fears, their inner demons or external demons. To really understand who that character is, who they are at their core. Because then I can then speak to them, right? Start to take them on that character journey, place them into the context, the background, and then show them the way from there, right? If I'm doing it this way. So let's just see what Jarvis gives us. Start out with what does he want? Wants to help people. Okay. Let's try it again. Talking about a VP of sales here, and this might be or may not be.
No, this is on track. No, this is
Okay.
on track. This is what will happen.
Okay.
They would rather not have to roll up their sleeves if they don't need to. They would rather convince themselves, convince their investors that they should just go hire somebody to run sales for them. It's almost always a disaster if they're not far enough along. This is actually pretty good.
Run it out. Why, it's already asking the core question here. What does Mike need? Mike needs to sell his product. He's the only person selling it. Let's change this to fear. Again, to get at that core.
Oh my goodness.
Let's just keep it going. Why does Mike think the way he thinks, right? That's super. Now we're getting the psychology of the character himself. All right. And again, Jarvis just picks up on this.
This is part of when you guys are learning to work with Jarvis, this is the machine learning. It recognizes the pattern that it's coming into here. And so it's prompting itself based on the previous few thousand characters. And you could almost literally just keep doing this all day in certain sections.
This is insanely close. Like, these are the conversations I have. Yeah, I was just gonna say not insanely close, it's eerily close.
This persona real quick. Do to help Mike. This might be
better. This is just simply where it departs, because this is where we advocate hiring somebody who's expensive and a VP of sales too early is a mistake. That the CEO themselves has to figure it out, or at least understand the foundations and begin executing themselves before bringing somebody on. Because you could hire, and this is just going into more detail than probably anyone wants to know, but you could end up hiring somebody with sales experience, but not enough experience actually managing in the gray area that startup and early stage companies operate in. So they don't have the mental agility to identify trends and patterns and make adjustments. What they're likely to do is reapply what they were successful doing at a previous employer. And that's just a death sentence for early stage and startup. But that's awfully close, right up to that. That's awfully close. I mean, that's really close.
Right. Well, then you can start. I'm trying to look for ways in which we can craft a situation that could start us in the middle of something, like start us with in action, right? Like just a sentence, or you can even start, like if I'm thinking of that framework, right? ABDCE. Let's see. What does a daily routine look like? We can prompt Jarvis.
seeing how close this we can really get to nailing an avatar.
Continue with it. This is interesting.
Right. And I think, Darby, that's where your recipe actually comes in clutch. It's because if you can use the same idea, even if you're trying to craft a story like this, right? Where you just state in the content brief, like, who is this for? Why do they need it? What's the main solution? The who, what, when, why, and how that you have, the 5 kind of questions, and put that in the content brief. That'll help keep Jarvis on track.
So where in particular, we talked a little bit about the introduction, where in particular are you hitting a roadblock, if any, right now, with your outline as it is?
Yeah, so my initial question, via messenger this morning with you, is just how long does the introduction need to be? So obviously I have a lot of background and experience, but it's hard for me to know just how much should be in there. I've seen, if I just grabbed a couple books off my shelf, some of them are 20 pages long and others are 5 pages long. So I was kind of battling with, how deep do you go? Is there kind of is there a rule of thumb, or is there a best practice around how long your introduction should be? And you might have shared this already and I've just missed it with all the information coming in. But then if we scroll down, I'm on mine, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, the book. Okay, so then right there, this book is for you. So what was really helpful for me here in Austin's video, which just wasn't occurring to me at all yesterday when I was working on this, was then how to even though it's in the outline in Jarvis in the recipe, it was helpful for me to see it in Austin's video, like to literally see it the way it's laid out, like you see on the screen now, versus see it in the outline in Jarvis. But so this book is for you. And so for me, there's a story brand script that I have, the journey that people go through, and then being able to answer, well, that's supposed to be tired. What are they tired of? What are they ready for? What do they want more of? And then addressing the skeptics. And then 3 ways this book is different. That one's not going to be too hard for me to do. How to read this book. So for mine, it's sequential order, and then complete the exercises as you go. And then upfronting the fact that this is a process. You're not going to be able to go build this in your new strategy in 2 hours. So I can easily talk about all the experience of running workshops, and then what it's likely going to take for them in a team of, of 2 or 3 or 4 people. And then in Austin's video, he talks about, initially he put he put his story up front, and he found that the feedback he was getting was that it should be the last part, because people just they want the meat of it. They're less concerned about him and his details, but him and his details, his story, then coming after at the end of the introduction is where it was going to have a greater impact. And then the 3 objectives of getting them to believe it's the right opportunity, or in this case, the right book for them, get them to believe that I can help as the author helping them, and then get them to realize that they themselves can do it. So I was really stuck, to be honest, like until we were messaging this morning and I went back and watched Austin's video. I was really stuck on the introduction, because I'm probably like a lot of people, like I've got a lot of tremendous experience and a lot of knowledge, but I have this trash in my head that says, who really gives a crap about what I know? And so this forced me to come back and put it in a structure that pulls that out and is valuable. Like that outline that you're seeing on the left side of the screen, this did not look this way 3 hours ago. This was a mess 3 hours ago. So Austin's video is very helpful for me.
Perfect. So that is exactly why we emphasize the advanced readers so much, and getting this out to those people that can give you that direct feedback. It could be, you could think it's the most amazing story in the world, and if it just doesn't come across and people don't even get to reading it right through your intro, or they don't get the key points you're giving, that's a sign that you need to go deeper on certain topics. And you don't need to finish your entire book to start getting feedback from there, right? Like if you have a few people in mind right now who can get this value out of it, start having those conversations right now. As an expert and someone who's dealt with this so much as you have over the course of your career, I would also say, like, trust your gut, because you are an expert here. And a lot of people don't know what they don't know. You don't want to assume that your readers know everything, you want to assume that they know nothing about this topic. You can see what are the questions that people are asking for the most. You can answer all those questions in your book, or you could keep it really focused to a very specific problem, which is what we like suggest here. So like your outline, just going into it, I mean, like the way that it's set up right here, coming off of the introduction, right? Each of these sections are, important to know and understand the foundation of sales, why it's here, create a strategy using whether it's that recipe or story brand, or how have you telling your story of how did I learn this information? How did I earn it? Your story leading into this story could be a really smooth transition, right? From that before and after bridge of introducing it, right? So each of these chapters can all introduce with a specific story, right? That leads into these topics right here, and then give them those actions in the conclusion. If you guys know the topics and the chapter titles and then what you're going to address in each chapter, this is a great way to start off and get the meat of it. If you don't do anything more than these, and you can cover each of your chapters topics inside of them. Like, don't feel like you need to add more just because you can, or to hit a word count. Like, you shouldn't have any issue filling up a book that you can print and send out if you outline it in this sort of process, right? And so you've got 10 chapters here, right? What are 10 personal stories of your growth and development that have helped you learn the sales process metrics, know your sales messaging? How did you discover how to do a buyer's persona back in the day? How did you first, really dial in your target audience? Or what's an experience that you've helped somebody else as a case study in doing that, and dialing in your target audience? Right, getting those stories in there. And then again, the call to action can be, hey, go and download these worksheets, or watch this video that I put together for you in your book at this link. Here are some action steps. And now in the next chapter, we're going to be talking about the next thing that we're doing, right? So you're quite literally leading them step by step by step in a contained chapter for each one of these chapters inside of your book, that your prospect should be able to see, or your reader, whoever, should be able to get the value that they're looking for directly from that chapter, and they can go and apply it and take immediate action on it, right? This is going to help for one, having people use your book as a reference book and a point that they come back to if that's the way that your book is supposed to be used. But it's also going to help with not like leaving any open ends where someone's like, oh, I read 2 chapters of this book and I had no idea where I was even at. I can never take action on it, and they never even get to your conclusion, right? And that all the way in the future that you're painting for them in the introduction is selling them on getting to the conclusion. Conclusion ties up what they learned and who they became once they've done this. And then obviously there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want help doing it, right? They're going to want to work with you. They're going to reach out. They might want more resources, materials, right? If you've done your job and helped somebody through this entire section, because you're weaving story inside of it, you're sharing your personal experience. Every one of these chapters not only can help, add to your credibility for sure, help you like clarify your own marketing message for when you go to market the book, because now you have a really good reference point to go back and say, all right, in chapter 4, I had a really good piece of content on this, had some really good structure on talking about like overabundance of information. Right, go make a YouTube video out of this and go put it on your YouTube channel. Like each chapter, subsection of each chapter is your content that you're going to be able to use to market this book. How do you contain each chapter into what exactly the person that's reading it needs to know right now to then go implement that or take the next set of action? Say enough that gets your point across and delivers the value that you're needing to with your words to your reader, and then get on to the next section. In the next section, right? By Thursday, we want to have 5,000 words. Introduction, outline, and conclusion. Get the meat of that out today. I would look for Mike, you to have this outline each chapter chapters 3 through 10, outlined the same way that you did chapters 1 and 2. Again, Jarvis is a great tool, but you're the expert here, right? Jarvis isn't going to make this stuff up on its own. Your direction is going to, help you get the most out of it or be confused. So keep that research up right now. And any other questions before we sign off? I got a few more minutes set aside here in case anyone has any questions about where they're at right now or what's next. Cool. Everyone feel clear then on where you're at right now and where they need to go tomorrow? Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. We did have, I saw Robert has a comment in here. I think maybe a few SaaS companies, maybe where's their information? Cool. Yeah, don't be afraid to be an expert, guys. Don't be afraid to be an expert. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
See you later.
Yeah.